What attracted you to the story, Andy?
Well, the screenplay was beautifully executed, so the story really, touched me, obviously, and having an opportunity to lend a hand in trying to bring the idea of mental illness, uh, in terms of a story, how that might be able to help people who are either suffering from it or know people who are suffering from it, or have close members of a family, and you're trying. There's a lot of things to learn from this movie, and it's told in a sort of in a way that's maybe a little bit more palatable to sit through, with the nature of the inventiveness of bringing these characters to life and how they speak to him, and there's I guess a youthful quality to that, to the style of the film, that perhaps gives it a wider reach for people to embrace. Uh, and then the character that they asked me to play really touched me. I felt, a kinship to him, and felt as though there was an opportunity to show the clergy in sort of a modern way, sort of like a hipper type of priest, that they exist, but sometimes they're not portrayed that way so much in films.
Right.
And he's the kind of priest that might, if nobody's around and he's in the confessional, he might light up and smoke a joint, that kind of thing. So that's sort of conceptually what I was thinking. Obviously it
Sure.
doesn't happen in the movie, but that's kind of like it struck me. And the fact that someone like that can have a genuine effect on this child, and that the arc starts from the child taking in the priest's sort of bullshit uh, advice, and very cynical, and somehow later, little by little, it helps him get through ownership of what he needs to take ownership of
Sure.
in order to move on with his life.
Now, you were raised Catholic, and you briefly mentioned how you've kind of modernized this priest. Did you have to do any research or any refresher course, so to speak, in Catholicism,
No,
and to find your character?
no, not at all. The clarity of the character was pretty, was latched on to that idea. And then, of course, you have to, find yourself inside of the character. You have to make that connection, that sense of truth. You have to live truthfully within this imaginary circumstance. So you have to accept yourself as this person, and find those parallels that are close to who you are.
Well, you obviously give this wonderful human performance playing a man of God, but one with a great sense of self and sense of humor. Did you have any role models like that growing up?
Not in the clergy, but
Hmm.
certainly in life. My father, a lot of members of that generation that I knew were friends of my father, my brother, friends that you take, we're like, we in life, even before one is an actor, we as children, if we're like magpies, we're constantly grabbing from people and behavior, and you go, hey, that's really cool. Hey, I went to see James Bond. Isn't Sean Connery cool? Yeah, I want to be like him. And you're always kind of doing that. And if you have the blessing of having a a father figure at home and a mother figure at home that you admire and you learn from, you're ahead of the game. A lot of
Sure.
kids don't have that, and that becomes, sometimes you have to search for it, maybe in a grandfather or a grandmother, or sometimes an outside source from the family, which might not be the best influence. And you
Right.
can get derailed very easily as a young man or a young girl, because you're associating with the wrong influences. So uh, I guess the answer was yes.
So, speaking of young influences and younger generations, what was it like working with Charlie and the younger cast?
Well, I only work with Charlie. I didn't work with any other actor in the piece. Uh, really, I mean, we had that one big scene in the in the you know graduation, but most of my scenes are with Charlie, and Charlie's wonderful. He's a wonderfully sensitive, grounded actor. Great listener. He's very honest. He was very connected to what we were doing with each other. There was no sense of trying to push it to go in any particular direction, And it was just, he's wonderful. He has a great sensitivity and sensibility.
Such a good way to put it. Last question. Living in the uncertainty of our new normal, where people are experiencing levels of such things as depression and anxiety, what do you hope audiences will take away from this?
You want your things that you do in life to have resonance, that's always been my barometer to, what I do. I hope that it has resonance. It doesn't have to be something deep. It could just be something frivolous and entertaining, and it has resonance for you because you've laughed and your spirits have been lifted. So I think in this case, it's the same thing. You want the subject matter and what you learn as you watch the movie to have resonance in your life. Whatever that resonance is, I just hope that it's a positive one.
Sure.
People can relate to it differently. It's not, you don't go in and say, this is my message and this is a thing. You present all the complications of these relationships and how people need to help understand each other, have more sort of humanity, understanding, and not be quick to judge people who have illnesses. But an illness like that is not only a great struggle for the person who's in it, but it's also a great struggle for those around him that are trying to figure out and discern how can they help. Every time I try to help, I put the wrong foot forward. How can I put the right foot forward? It's a constant learning experience. It's not so black and white, So if this movie sheds any light on that process, that would be a great thing,
First question, what attracted you to the story?
What attracted me to the story, a few different things. First of all, the people involved. Second of all, the subject matter. And then third, really, the way that the filmmakers, Tor, Nick, Pete, and Mickey, wanted to go about talking about the subject matter and how they wanted to do that. That really pulled me in at the beginning, because mental health, I think, is one of those things that, should be talked about much more than it is. And I think a lot of the reason for that is because people don't really know how to talk about it. It's still something that's uncomfortable and unknown. And that's, very understandable. And I think it was clear to me that the intent behind this was, hopefully educating people, but also doing so in a compelling way and making a good movie in the process. And yeah, so for all those reasons, I was really hooked.
How did you prepare? Were you doing it all on your own? Did you dig down with some research on mental illness?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, that was, I quite honestly did kind of go, oh crap, at the beginning, because for me, I think I knew going in, if I were going to play this character and be a part of making this movie, I needed to know for myself that I really did everything in terms of research and in terms of trying to understand what this experience is like, that I possibly could. And so then that really started, of course, having conversations with Tor and kind of understanding the process he had already begun for himself, and looping myself into that somewhat, and then doing some of my own research. And he actually connected me to this psychiatrist who specializes in working with young men who have been recently diagnosed with schizophrenia, and getting to talk to that guy then at length about, what the experience of having a psychotic break is like, what the experience of psychosis is like for the first time for somebody, how long it takes to understand these things. And then also in turn, what his patients also are just kind of in the midst of in every other area of their life, when it comes to their family, when it comes to relationships. Like, these are still 16-year-old boys that he was talking about at the end of the day. And in a lot of ways, they don't want to think about this illness unless they absolutely have to. And they want to be thinking about their dreams and, the people they might have crushes on and stuff like that. And I think getting that bit of information too from that guy was so helpful in terms of reminding myself as an actor that it's so easy to, I think, get lost in the technicalities of what this illness might be, and let that be the story, rather than bringing it always back to a really human place with this character, and just remembering that this is a part of his story, but this illness is not the entirety of his story in any type of way.
So you are obviously the central character. You're in almost every scene, if not every scene. What was it like working with your co-stars, from Andy Garcia to Taylor, Molly Walton, the hallucinations, the whole gang?
The whole gang of everybody. I mean, really from the cast all the way through the entire crew, genuinely were so wonderful. And I think everyone had their own stake in the story as well, which just made it that much better. And it was such a kind of trusting, safe space to be in for that. And I think to be able to tell this story, you kind of need that. And that was really set by those other actors just as much as anybody, but really like those guys like Andy, you know, like Walt and Molly, who have been doing this for a really long time, showing up and just really knowing how to go about this, and just being really so helpful throughout, for me, because, you know, it is a lot to kind of have going on in my head all the time. And the days were long. And even if you have the greatest team and greatest producers and all that stuff in the world, you know, it is what it is. And it can be really tough at times, but being able to look to them for support, and then likewise being able to look to like Pete and Mickey as well, like from all angles, having that there was so helpful. But they just bring such life to these characters in ways that I think are just essential to the story, especially with those hallucinations. Like, I think if you didn't have good actors playing those parts, they could so easily be written off. And because we had actors of that magnitude doing it, it really made a world of difference, I think.
Right. I can only imagine what you and Devin went through, you know, with his more, definitely he is a character.
Yeah.
But, you know, is there 1, 2 short stories from set that's a heavy subject, but was there any good times?
Definitely good times. Definitely good times that we had. I'm just trying to remember like a specific thing that was funny. I mean, honestly, yeah, getting to work with Devin, he was just always making me laugh. Just, I mean, he's a really funny person naturally, but then when he's showing up and he's just in the bathrobe and the boxers and, you know, he's very much in the spirit of the character, I think it was really hard to keep a straight face. And quite honestly, Andy as well. I mean, he would kill me. He would crack me up so much. And I think that was also tough because obviously, again, like, you know, I think Adam is really, for a lot of the movie, in a pretty chaotic headspace. Mm-hmm. And so having these guys that would, you know, accidentally pull me out of that with their charm was sometimes, you know, tough, but well worth it in retrospect for sure.
No, that's great. Andy said he loved working with you, and you guys did have a good time in that confessional, you know, take after take. So.
I know he really would kill me with his little comments, just under his breath and stuff.
Not wanting to pry, but obviously one component of the film is about secrets. You have, you know, Adam has his secrets, Maya has her secrets. Looking back, is there anything from your childhood that was kind of, you thought, oh my God, if somebody finds out about this, my life is over type of scenario? Or is there something like that?
Yeah, I had such a specific upbringing in that I started working when I was 10. And so I think I just kind of had a different, I think I experienced the normal, like, embarrassing things that people, you know, go through in growing up, but nothing that ever felt like, oh my gosh, I have to hide this from, more even like, I think that more kind of manifested later, for me, because I wasn't really in that environment, in that school environment with kids. And I wasn't having to think, you know, I was just with my family, and obviously, you know, they know everything about me, better for worse. So yeah, but I think later I've really been able to kind of to learn that lesson and have a better understanding of what fear and what secrets can do to a person, and for you, what they can do. Like, you know, that the idea of like, oh, I can handle this, I can put up with this myself. You know, that yes, that might be the case in one moment, but how quickly that really the curtain is really pulled away, and what's revealed is just like, you know, that I think for me, I really found that I was just really, really scared, and I think accepting that and then being able to move on from that place and doing so with the support of other people, which I think absolutely happens in the movie. I think that was what helped me so much, and that's really what happened with Adam. But I would actually funnily say that it was much closer to the experience of shooting the movie that I was learning those lessons than any time before. But
got it.
I'm playing catch up a lot.
A late bloomer. Okay, gotcha. Great. No, thank you. And that kind of dovetails into this last question, which I'm sure you've been asked 20 times. But, you know, in our new normal these days, there are reports and people are experiencing higher levels of depression, anxiety, just the population as a whole. What are you hoping in a positive sense from the film? What do you want audiences to take away from the film?
I mean, I want them to take away, my hope is that they take away an earned sense of hope for themselves and for the people they love and for the future of the world, really. I mean, I think that's my hope specifically with this, because I think this movie is really going after the topic of, what we were just talking about in terms of secrets and shame that surround that, and that really everyone, I think that's just a universal truth. I think everyone in their own way experiences that. And then of course, yeah, I think now connecting that back to mental health then, and how that can be compounded. I mean, if someone is suffering, then that pressure to hide that suffering, that pressure to just seem like everything's okay, can just make it worse and worse and worse, and go down this terrible rabbit hole. And so I hope this movie can be a lighthouse for people that might find themselves in a similar position, feeling as though they don't have the safety, they don't have the place to put those feelings and to put those fears and thoughts, that they might be able to find that somewhat in this movie. And then hopefully this movie just encourages them to be able to make those connections in their own life as well. Because I think that really is what helps Adam so much in the film. And I think that really helps everyone.
Uh-huh. Yep. All right. I, for some reason, got tapped to do these, and I'm happy to do it. Thank you for putting in. You've put in a long day already, so thank you again. This is Charlie Nelson with Roadside Attractions. Once again, these are the generics that we will, from your answers, we'll put together a little package like all the other press have been doing, and then we'll be able to boot it up on some place called EPK TV, which allows approved press to access it for those that didn't get to participate today around the country. So it's a great tool for us to get the word out. Anyway, so the first question is, what attracted you to the story?
I liked the the messaging behind it, and telling a story about schizophrenia and mental health issues in our youth. And I thought that type of subject matter was really important. And I also really connected to my character, and I thought that she was relatable for a lot of young women, and I moreover related to her. So that excited me.
That's great. Well, you're not too far out of the high school years, but did you have any need any refreshers on what the kids were like back in those days, or your character, who is obviously building your character, who has got this, she's multi-layered like an onion, peeling it away?
I think that so much of what what teenagers and the youth go through is so much of what adults go through, and we think that it's so different and they're in a different universe, but they're not. Especially now, they're so complex and so mature for their age, and seeing the world and experiencing it in a real time, like most adults are, especially right now. And so I think that there's a lot of universal themes that just probably kind of expand as you get older, but they're all there already. And I have a younger brother. I ask him about things, and like specific things, like vaping's a really big thing right now. It wasn't big when I was, younger. So there's specific things, but I really do believe that the core issues remain the same, and it doesn't feel like it's that different. It doesn't feel like there's so much more that didn't already exist in terms of relatability.
Great, thank you. Now, it's a heavy duty subject. It was, there is a healthy dose of humor in there, which I think helps for the younger folks to relate to more so. But, you know, what was it like you getting into character? Because in a sense, I don't think it was CG in every scene. Here you are doing some scenes, but you have the hallucinations hovering around. Were you able to stay focused on what you had to get done in that scene, in those scenes?
Not always.
Distractions.
I mean, not always. We did the scenes first, just Charlie and I, and then they would come in after. So I had, you know, many takes where I was able to just kind of do it the way with him and see what that was like without the hallucinations. And then when they came in, it felt like I already had my footing to some degree, and that I could focus a little bit more and be more present and not as distracted. That being said, all of the hallucinations are really funny actors and friends of mine, and so there were, you know, moments that we would, you know, freak out and laugh and be crazy, but not as much as I think it would have been had the you know, order been switched.
Got it. No, makes total sense. And then just one side note, when you say, you know, they're friends, but little 6 degrees of separation with Anna Sophia and your Bridges to Terabithia days. You know, what was it like? How early on did you know that she was going to be in the film as well?
Oh, I didn't know her from Bridge to Terabithia.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We did a movie together maybe 3 years ago. That's how.
Oh, sorry. I got my movies mixed. Sorry.
It's all good. Yes, I didn't know, I think, until a couple weeks before filming that she was going to be in it, but she's a friend of mine, and I really love her and think she's so wonderful. And it's great to work with her again. Molly Parker, I also worked with before, and it was really lovely to work with her as well. And that's the best part about this business, is you keep meeting the same people again and again and again for actors in different suits. So so it was just a joy.
Well, that's great. Yeah, no, great. A familiar face on a new set's probably a very welcome sight. And one last quick question. You know, we're living in our new normal these days, and you know, the film addresses mental illness, schizophrenia directly, but it can touch on the larger. And the population these days is you know, you're hearing higher percentages of people with anxiety and depression and all these other different forms. So what do you hope that this film can bring to light, or to the audiences that will be seeing it? What do you hope they take away from it?
I hope that they can see their story mirrored on screen, and that it's affirmative in some capacity. I think that, you know, there's a lot of people that deal with this, and it hasn't, you know, been seen necessarily prior, and so I just hope that, you know, people can relate in some way, and if not, that they can learn something about schizophrenia and mental illness.
No, I think it speaks a lot about compassion and, you know, breaking down, you know, stigmas. You know, 50 years ago, divorce, and then into sexuality and a whole nuance of other things. But, you know, I hope that it can really open up some eyes and doors, and that it's not a taboo subject. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. Studio's done. So you got a couple more, I think, coming up, but thank you very much. Again, thank you for the day, and hope to see you in some form in the near future. Yeah. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, Charlie.
Bye. See ya. Thank you.
Thank you. Taylor.